Super Rugby Friday games, folks. One from NZ, one from Australia. We're going to go through some squads, some stats, predictions, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how the games might play out this week. A bit of pressure because last week, I thought, was a really good round. Really good competitive games. A lot of close ones, but none in NZ. Well, we're back in NZ this week, at least for the first game, with the Blues taking on the Rebels. And on paper, the Blues are supposed to go in and just smash these boys from Melbourne. But we will see. The Blues, 9-1, top of the log. Rebels, 3-7, have slowly been coming right after a pretty awful start to the season. They were genuinely a tough team to watch and just seemed rudderless, lost. But they've been coming right. So whatever the coaching staff is doing is finally starting to get embedded with the players and starting to pay off. Hopefully, but it's still an uphill battle for them against the Blues. The Blues were a bit disappointing last week, and they've still picked a pretty strong lineup, although Beauden Barrett is out on All Blacks leave for this one, so Stephen Perofeta steps in at 10. Christie, who's been in good form, is still there at 9. You've still got Tuivasa Sheck, you've still got Caleb Clark. Rico Ioane is back after All Blacks leave, likewise Hoskins Sotutu at 8. Tom Robinson's back in as well, but interestingly, he's in as lock this week. Talea is back as well, likewise Jordan Lay on the bench, Laulala, Sam Knox. So the Blues aren't exactly underestimating the Rebels here. They're bringing back some of the big guns, which is pleasing. But as I said, they picked a strong team last week as well. And only just scraped through against the Force away from home. So they've had that trip back from Perth, but remember they've had a decent amount of rest because it was a Friday game last week as well. So it's not like they're on a short turnaround with the travel. So the Blues should be well settled and looking to go and do a job over the Rebels. The Rebels, like I said, they started really badly, but they are on a bit of a decent run now, at least better, which is not hard because the bar is pretty low with how they started off in the season. But good win, solid win, not spectacular, but decent one over Moana Pacifica last week. Still 3 wins on the trot, not on the trot, but 3 wins on the board is more than they looked like they were going to get at the start of the season. They've picked a pretty stable lineup. You still got the likes of Hodge, Callaway there. Remember, they've had a suspension in the midfield with Nu'u again. So Ili's had to move to 12, and Lucas Ripley, who I don't know if I've seen play, is in at 13. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge up against Rico Ioane, who is himself finally starting to come into that midfield role, which he's been in for a couple of years now. Joey Powell gets a start at 9 because he's been decent actually, coming off the bench the last few weeks for the Rebels. Carter Gordon's still at 10. Leota moves from the lock to number 8. Hardwick is still there at 7, and he's been really good, so the Blues will have to look out for him at the breakdown. Cadam's in at lock. They've brought in Fa'amusili and Gibbon to start as their prop. So names who weren't in the squad last week are limited, but a lot of guys have either moved from the bench to start or have got a different jersey number on this week. So yeah, a bit of tinkering from the Rebels coaching staff this week. Stats-wise, interestingly, the Blues have not been playing with a lot of possession of late. They've been having to do a lot of defending, but the defense is solid. So yeah, it's an interesting mix of things. Obviously, if you're a Blues fan, you don't really like seeing your team just having to sustain, wave after wave of opposition attack. But when the Blues do finally get some ball, they're pretty cutting. They're a pretty efficient team at getting clean breaks and beating defenders and scoring points. So they're effective. At least that part is pleasing, and the defense is solid enough. The Rebels, I mean, as I said, they're on the improve, but they've still been conceding too many clean breaks. Just too many points generally. I'm getting messages on my phone, which I probably should have muted before the start of the video, but we're already 4 minutes in. We're not going back now. So yeah, the Rebels, if they're going to have a shot, man, they're going to need to be at the top of their game. The Blues are predicted to get this one done pretty easily, but they were the same last week and it was close. So home is a different story this week, but yeah, 25 points with the bookies and 21 points with the algorithm. We'll see if the Blues can live up to the hype. The second game, speaking of living up to the hype, man, the Reds have been pretty lackluster the last couple of weeks. Look at this record, 7-3. Prior to the last 2 weeks, it was just the one loss. So they've had 2 losses in a row. Last week was a loss at home. The previous one was a loss in Melbourne. But that was a kind of neutral venue for that one. So still in Australia, they need to get a result here against the Highlanders. Highlanders are 2-8. They kind of had a bit of a rough ride of it over in Fiji, although a much better second half. They managed to kind of power through that wave of emotion that was the the Fijian home crowd, which was just immense. So that would have been like an extra player on the field for the Drua for sure. But look at that record, man. The Highlanders aren't having a great season. And a lot of their play is not that flash. So they still haven't seemed to click just yet. But as I said, the Reds haven't clicked the last couple of weeks either. So a lot to think about with this game, because the Reds should still make the playoffs, because most teams make the bloody playoffs the way the structure is at the moment. But the Highlanders are genuinely fighting it out with a few other teams for that kind of 8th spot maybe. We'll have to see how things kind of pan out the next few weeks. But man, the Reds with this record at home should be beating the Highlanders. Basically, it's as kind of simple as that. But they've got it a bit tough because Taniela Tupou is pretty much out for the season, is what I've read, and James O'Connor is still not back. So those are two of their key players without a doubt. It's going to be a much harder job without them. But good news is Jordi Pataya is back, and he's on the wing this week. And Vunivalu was also named in the starting lineup. He was last week as well, but ended up pulling out with a hammy. Fingers crossed he's actually in the lineup this week. Fluke moves into the midfield, so there's no Paisami, which is another big guy to have out. But you still got McDermott at 9, who's been in good form. A lot of the Aussie 9s have been in good form, which people have been pointing out as well. Udu is up from the bench, likewise Salakai Aloto, and Fotuaika starts at tight head. So, yeah, I mean, you got a bunch of Wallabies in the side, and they need to get a result. I'm putting that out there like pretty desperately. But yeah, we will see how they can go at home. The Highlanders, like I said, haven't been that flash, but they did get a good win last week, and they were the first team to go to Fiji, so credit to them for as I said, riding that storm. Coltman's back starting this week. There's no Makaleo this week. Josh Dixon is also back in the second row. James Lynch gets a start. There's still Mikaele Tu'u and Harmon who've been good. Aaron Smith's still captain. Mitch Hunter's still 10. They've resisted the urge to put him back to fullback. Garden Bishop's still at 15. Thomas Umaga Jensen's been pretty good. Likewise, Sam Gilbert. So there's a lot of talent in the Highlander squad. But yeah, they just need to click, eh? You got Fakatava on the bench. You got Marty Backs on the bench. Dan Leonard-Brown. So it's not a squad without talent, but they are away in Brisbane, which is a tough place to go, but the Chiefs did get it done last week. Speaking of last week, you got to feel like the Reds kicked too much ball last week, and that was the game plan. They spoke to Brad Thorne about it, and he was like, we're staying in this game, we're going to kick. And they kicked like 32 times. Their average is like in the low 20s, so they kicked a lot more than usual. I would have liked to see them back their boys a little bit more, because at home, they shouldn't be the team kind of on the back foot. I mean, I guess you can kick offensively as well, but maybe if you're going to kick to Vunivalu, that's going to be a strategy that you can employ, but we'll have to kind of wait and see. I want them to back their players a little bit more than last week anyway. For the Highlanders, man, their line-out was phenomenal last week. The Drua struggled, and the Reds line-out's not been that flash either, so that might be an area they can get on top, but they love them more now, eh? Like, they got Tony Brown as coach, and they love them more. Like, when I think Tony Brown, I think like some kind of intricate line-out move, but they just bloody maul it. So be interesting to see if they use this line-out as a platform to set something up, or go with a maul. Mauls have been successful all season, not just Super Rugby, lots of competitions. There's been tons of mauls. One of the top scorers in the Premiership in England as a hooker, because his team just loves them all. So fair play. If you can get them all to work, use it as a weapon, but maybe a bit of a mix is something you want to see. And to be fair, the Highlanders did do a bit of that last week. But anyway, bookies say Reds by 4. Algorithm says Reds by 10. So they are favoured to get this done. Both the home sides. I do feel like there's more pressure on the Reds because they have been a bit underwhelming. But we will see. You guys let me know your thoughts on these games. How do you see things playing out? And I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.